Hello there, it's just gone midday here in Moscow. You're watching RT International, and we'll start with breaking news because at least 18 people have been killed and 10 injured in a suicide car bomb attack on a security convoy in the Afghan city of Khost. Well, let's get some reaction now because we're joined by Sreeram Chaulia. He's the Dean of the General School of International Affairs. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for coming on to RT. We were hearing there from a local reporter saying that previously we've seen these type of attacks target US and Afghan forces, but on this occasion there's been a substantial civilian death toll too. Do you think that they were the target this time?
Andrew, the way the war has been going this summer, the civilians are taking the brunt of the attacks, and the violence has been largely directed at them. And unfortunately, the count from the UN official statistics show that civilians are at the receiving end of most of the violence that's happening, and that's because of the intensification of the insurgency. So Taliban and Haqqani network, remember Khost is a kind of a place which is very close to the border with Pakistan, and they've got safe havens on the other side, and they keep coming in and striking and going back and receiving shelter on the Pakistani side. So this happens with all the eastern provinces, Paktika, Khost, Nangarhar, where unfortunately ISIS has now become very active. So all these groups, in fact, it's also worth remembering today is the first day of Ramadan. And for the jihadists, striking on Ramadan and committing gruesome violence on Ramadan is also seen as a special pious act that will earn them points in heaven. So if you look at the ISIS as well as Taliban ideology, is pretty similar on this point, which is to wreak maximum havoc and damage on the security forces, and of course what they consider to be the foreign occupying forces, which is the NATO coalition forces, and the Afghan state, which they think is a puppet of the West. So if you take all these factors into consideration, this coming month of Ramadan is likely to be very bloody, as has been the case in the last few years. There is no respite in the violence, even during the holy month of fasting, and that's really a very sad thing for the entire Muslim world to consider, because these extremists are receiving outside funding and are committing acts in the name of Islam, but unfortunately destroying the fabric of civil society and hurting innocent civilians.
And in terms of what sort of response the US and Afghan forces can muster, I mean, from what you say, it sounds like they are relatively powerless to prevent attacks like this.
Well, Andrew, what has happened is, especially in eastern Afghanistan, the terrain is largely dominated by Pakistani proxies, and they have been trying to, run the show there and use it as a bargaining chip and a leverage for the potential negotiations whenever they may start. But remember, even on the western end of Afghanistan, Herat, just yesterday there was a major attack. So from Herat to Khost and from Kunduz all the way to Kandahar, north, east, south, and west, this insurgency has been growing, and some people attribute it to reduced intensity of Western coalition fighting, and that they have been in a withdrawal mode, and therefore Taliban are resurgent. But the point is, at the end of the day, the Afghan state has to also stand up. We have a situation now where the vice president of Afghanistan, one of the important figures, General Dostum, has been taken out of the country after he fell foul with the president by exercising extrajudicial authority and powers. So you have a situation where the CEO, Dr. Abdullah, is not seeing eye to eye with President Ghani. So in this kind of, fragmented situation where they are in disarray, the insurgents will take heart and will use this, internal battles among the state elites to try and gain more control over territory. So I think it's very important, the international community, all the regional players, India, Russia, China, United States, all of us, we must try and support the state structure before it collapses. I mean, it is not yet at a stage where it could collapse, but it's getting close, and already the loss of territory and loss of control has been higher, the rapidity, and the soldiers are suffering massive losses like you have just seen in Khost, as well as civilians. So I think it's a very, very critical time. We need to give more military assistance to the state, but at the same time, we need to also look at forging a coalition and unity among the various warring factions. Ethnic divisions, unfortunately, have been misused and politicized in Afghanistan time and again. We need an Afghan national identity to stand up. And right now, unfortunately, the Taliban are claiming to be Afghan nationalists. So that is the irony of the situation.
OK, Sreeram, look, we'll leave it there. Unfortunately, the line's gone down there. But that was Sreeram Chaulia, Professor and Dean of the General School of International Affairs. Thank you.